September 1944. A supply depot near Chartres, France. Dust hangs in the air, thick, 40 trucks wait. The line stretches past the horizon. Engines idle, a low growl. Drivers lean against fenders. They are exhausted. They have driven 400 miles from Normandy. No sleep. Sergeant Roosevelt Jackson walks to the depot office. He needs fuel. He needs ammunition for the front. But Major Franklin Avery stands in the doorway. He looks at the black drivers. He shakes his head. He says no. Avery claims he does not trust colored men with Class V cargo. He demands white drivers instead. The fuel stays in the tanks. Patton's armor 30 miles away is running dry. A delay begins. It is a choice that will stall a massive advance. But Patton is coming. He will ensure the major learns what it means to move a crate. This is the story of a supply officer who tried to stall an entire armored advance because he could not see past the skin of the men behind the wheel. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We tell the World War II stories that show exactly what happened when prejudice met consequences in the heat of battle. Roosevelt Jackson was 32 years old. He came from Birmingham, Alabama. He was the lead driver for a 40-truck convoy in the Red Ball Express. Back home, Jackson had spent his life fixing broken tractors when white mechanics turned him away. He enlisted to prove he could build something better than a fence. He had seen the hell of the Normandy hedgerows and the smoke over St. Lo. For 72 hours, he had not closed his eyes. He drove 400 miles of French dirt roads in total darkness. He navigated by the cat-eye lights of the truck ahead. He never hit a ditch. He never broke an axle. He arrived at the supply depot without losing a single bolt or a single crate of ammunition. Now he stood on the gravel at Chartres. He held a signed order for priority fuel. He needed the gasoline to move. He needed to get his men back to the road before the sun went down. Major Franklin Avery was 41. He was a career quartermaster officer from Richmond, Virginia. Avery kept a perfect depot. His paperwork was always flawless. His uniform was tailored and pressed. His boots shone like black glass in the morning sun. He lived by a simple, hard conviction. He believed that black soldiers were fundamentally unreliable under the stress of high-stakes logistics. He told his staff that the Negro was unsuited for the handling of volatile explosives. Avery had already sabotaged 3 previous convoys. He hid his prejudice behind the word logistics. He told the drivers there was a scheduling error. He told them the fuel was reserved for white units further north. He sat in his clean office with a cup of hot coffee and watched the war stall. He believed his rank and his heritage gave him the right to decide who was worthy of the fight. He did not care that the tanks were empty. He only cared that his depot remained exactly the way he wanted it. September 1944 was a month of speed and starvation. The Allies had smashed through the German lines in Normandy. Patton's Third Army was a moving hammer. It hit hard. It hit fast. The tanks moved so quickly they outpaced their own food and fuel. Every mile gained was another mile away from the beachheads. The ports in the north were still in enemy hands or smoking ruins. Everything had to come by truck. Thousands of tons of supplies moved from the coast to the border. The advance was a miracle of movement. But miracles require grease. They require oil. They require the constant rotation of rubber on hot asphalt. This was the era of the Red Ball Express. It was a one-way highway of pure grit. Trucks ran day and night. They carried the blood of the army. That blood was gasoline. Without it, the Sherman tanks were just heavy boxes of steel stuck in the French mud. The pressure on the logistics corps was immense. Command was desperate for speed, but in the rear echelons, old habits died hard. The army was segregated. Jim Crow lived in the ranks. Some officers saw the war as a secondary concern to their own social order. They valued their bias more than the breakthrough. High command knew about the delays. They heard the rumors of supply depots holding back vital stores from black units. Most colonels looked the other way. They called it a breakdown in communication. They called it a clerical error. It was easier to ignore the rot than to excise it. While the front lines begged for shells, men like Avery played games with paperwork. They believed the hierarchy of the old world would protect them. They thought the distance between the depot and the trenches was a shield. Now, that shield was about to shatter as Sergeant Jackson stood his ground in the dust of Chartres. Captain Thomas Miller was 34 years old. He hailed from Columbus, Ohio. He was a liaison officer for the 3rd Armored Division. He had one job. He had to keep the steel moving. He walked into the cool shade of the depot office. He found Major Avery leaning back in a mahogany chair. The major was reading a newspaper from 3 weeks ago. He did not look up. The air in the room smelled of floor wax and expensive tobacco. Outside, the dust from the idling trucks coated the windows. Miller stood by the desk. He waited. The major turned a page. "Major, those 40 trucks have been burning fuel in the sun for 3 hours," Miller said. "Let them burn," Avery replied. "General Patton expects that gasoline in the tanks of the 4th Armored by nightfall. The general will have to wait for a more qualified transport unit. Sergeant Jackson has the priority manifests signed by 3rd Army. I do not care what he has in his hand. Then why are the loaders sitting on their crates? I will not release high-explosive shells to these men. They are Red Bull drivers. Major, they are colored boys from the South who do not know a fuse from a fence post. They just drove 400 miles through blackout conditions without a single accident. Driving a truck is one thing. Trusting them with Class 5 cargo is another. The front line is dry. I will not have my depot blown up by an unreliable soldier who panics under the weight of his own load. Jackson has not lost a single crate since he left the beachhead. I do not trust their discipline. This is not about trust. It is about a direct order. I run this depot by the book, Captain. The book says move the supplies to the fighting man. The book says safety and security of the ammunition is paramount. You are stalling an entire division over a prejudice. I am protecting the Army from its own experiments in social engineering. If those tanks do not move, the Germans will counterattack, then send me white drivers from the 526th Transportation Corps. There are no white drivers. They are all committed to the northern sector. Then the fuel stays in the ground and the shells stay in the crates. You are refusing a combat priority. I am exercising my command discretion. You are losing us the war, Major. I am saving the Army from a disaster." Miller looked at Avery's polished belt. He saw the clean map on the wall. Nothing in this room had seen a speck of mud. "I am going to the radio," Miller said. "Go ahead. I have cousins in the Quartermaster General's office." Miller walked out to the dirt lot. The report reached Patton within the hour. The dust of the convoy had barely settled when a lone jeep tore through the depot gates. It did not slow down. It skidded to a halt directly in front of the office. General George S. Patton stepped out. He wore his full uniform. 4 stars gleamed on his helmet and his collar. The ivory grips of his revolvers caught the afternoon light. He did not say a word. He looked at the 40 idling trucks. He looked at Sergeant Jackson. Then he walked inside. The room went silent. Major Avery stood at attention. His face was pale. Patton stood 2 feet from him. He did not shout. He spoke in a voice that was low and sharp. "Major, why are these trucks not loaded?" "Sir, I was concerned about the reliability of the personnel." "What personnel?" "The drivers, General. I found them unsuitable for the transport of Class 5 explosives." "Are they American soldiers?" "Technically. Yes, sir." "Are they members of the Transportation Corps?" "They are, sir." "And you have decided to overrule a 3rd Army priority based on your personal assessment of their character?" "I felt it was my duty to protect the ammunition from incompetence." Patton looked out the window. He pointed a gloved finger at the line of trucks. "You talk to me about reliability, Major. You sit in this depot. You have a roof. You have a floor. You have a desk. You have not missed a meal since you landed at Cherbourg. You have never driven a 10-ton truck through a rainstorm in the middle of a forest, while the Luftwaffe looked for your shadow. Sergeant Jackson out there has done that for 3 days. He has driven 400 miles in the dark. He did not have headlights. He did not have a map. He did not have a warm bed. He did not lose a single truck. He did not lose a single crate. He brought the war to your front door on time and intact. You say you do not trust him with ammunition. I do not trust you with a pencil. You are holding up my gasoline. You are holding up my shells. Because you think the color of a man's hands changes the way a bullet flies. It does not. The only thing that matters is the speed of the advance. My tanks are 30 miles from the German border. They are sitting in the mud because of your concerns. You are not protecting this army. You are killing it. You are the most unreliable man in this depot. You have 1 minute. You will go outside. You will apologize to Sergeant Jackson. Then you will personally supervise the loading of every single crate onto those trucks. You will lift them yourself if you have to. If those trucks are not moving by sunset, you will be stripped of your rank and sent to the front as a private in a rifle company. Decide now." Avery did not speak. He swallowed hard. He reached for his cap. He walked toward the door. Patton did not move. He watched the major go. Avery stepped into the sun. He looked at the drivers. He looked at the heavy crates of shells. He began to walk toward the loading dock. He did not look back. Major Avery moved first. He stepped to the loading dock. He took off his polished coat. He folded it over a stack of empty pallets. His white shirt was damp within minutes. He gripped the edge of a wooden crate. It was heavy with 105mm shells. His soft hands bled. He did not stop. He pushed. He lifted. He carried. Under the glare of the French sun, the career officer became a common laborer. He smelled the bitter pine of the crates. He smelled the thick diesel exhaust from the idling trucks. He heard the rhythmic thud of equipment hitting the floorboards. 40 trucks waited. Jackson's men sat on their fenders. They did not cheer. They did not mock him. They simply watched the man who had doubted them do the work they had done for months. Patton sat in his Jeep 10 yards away. He watched every movement. He watched the sweat ruin Avery's tailored trousers. When the last truck was loaded, Patton did not offer a hand. He handed Avery a transfer order. It was for a filing basement in Paris. The major would spend the rest of the war moving paper instead of steel. Jackson gave the signal. The Red Ball Express roared to life. The dust swallowed the major as he stood alone on the empty dock. Roosevelt Jackson returned to Birmingham in the spring of 1946. He did not go back to repairing tractors for men who would not look him in the eye. He used his military savings to buy 3 surplus cargo trucks. He founded the Alabama Forwarding Company. He spent the next 4 decades building a logistics empire that covered the entire South. He never forgot the feeling of the steering wheel shaking in the darkness of the French countryside. He was a pillar of his community. He died in 2000 at the age of 88. He kept a small brass shell casing from that depot on his desk until his final day. It was a reminder of the night the road belonged to him. Franklin Avery remained in his basement office in Paris until the German surrender. He never saw another promotion. He resigned from the army in 1947 and retreated to a quiet life in Richmond. He lived in a house filled with old ledgers and bitter memories. He never spoke to the press. He never apologized. He died in 1974. He was buried in a family plot that had not changed in 100 years. He left behind a stack of unfinished memoirs that blamed the chaos of the war for his ruined career. Patton recorded the incident in a short entry in his personal diary. He wrote that he had no use for officers who prioritized their own shadows over the speed of the tanks. He noted that the only color that mattered in a breakthrough was the color of the gasoline. He said that a soldier who moves the mail is worth 10 who only move a pen. Some historians argue that Patton's intervention was driven entirely by tactical desperation. They suggest he cared little for social equality and only saw the drivers as a means to an end for his own glory. Others argue that his refusal to tolerate Avery's prejudice was a significant step toward military integration. They believe his decisive action set a precedent for leadership that valued performance over skin color. What is certain is that the Red Ball Express moved over 12,000 tons of supplies every single day. The success of the Third Army was built on the backs of these drivers. Their efficiency proved that the logistics of war could overcome the barriers of the old world. If you had been in Patton's position, would you have forced the major into manual labor, or would you have simply dismissed him? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about what happened when prejudice met consequences, make sure to subscribe.